So when you get into a fractured information environment where everyone's hyper-partisan and everything's like screaming and shouting and yelling at people and, your bad faith and this is going to be this crazy example, or for example, your stuff about talking about, how happy you are that somebody got shot at Trump's assassination attempt in that rally.
True. Wow. Damn, Destiny, you didn't let him call you out like that?
I think they have.
And then I'm also reminding you that earlier in the conversation, one of your biggest fears was expansion of executive power. But you think it would be good if the president himself would just try to fix the border through executive action.
I think you're oversimplifying there. I think there's a fear of expanding executive authority, but things like border are clearly within the executive's authority.
I super disagree. That is absolutely not true.
Wait, so if the president isn't if the one thing that the president has control over isn't the border, then what is it? The centrist that didn't vote at all is literally telling you what he thinks, and you're like, nah, that's not true. That can't be true. Even though we did lose the election, but that still can't be true. Destiny's living in denial, literally living in denial right now.
Let me amend my language then. I agree that the government having a position on something could influence how likely you are to win or lose the case based on whether or not the federal government would want to extend the Solicitor General to the Supreme Court arguments for it. So I'll give you like 10% of that. But at the end of the day, the constitutionality of DEI, whether it succeeds or fails, is ultimately going to be up to the Supreme Court, right?
Okay, so the example that I gave is 100% right, but that's 10%. I guess I'll take the 10.
Well, no, wait. I'm saying 10% because you're making it sound like if the federal government thinks that DEI is good or constitutional, then DEI is like always going to succeed, or like that's it, it's just over. But that's not the case, because, for instance, the very thing that we're talking about was a Supreme Court case that the Biden admin lost, that the Biden admin tried to defend with the Solicitor General. They failed, and affirmative action has gone under a Democrat, right?
Yeah, and because
the federal government supported that. The
doesn't mean that you're going to win.
Sure, but that would be an example, I would say, in my court, right? That was an example of a policy that they didn't like, and somebody challenged it, and the federal government really liked it because Democrats apparently only care about DEI and affirmative action, and they lost, and then it was gone under a Biden administration, under a Democrat admin.
Thank God. The other way that it can influence quite a bit is that a lot of the times you're suing under laws or regulations that are interpreted by the executive branch in different places. Like you're suing under Title IX, for example. The executive branch has a lot of power to interpret Title IX, and those regulations and interpretations impact what federal law is, even if you're a civil litigant.
Sure, but in that case, blame Congress, right?
No, because those are often delegated to the executive branch.
Wait, delegated by who?
By Congress.
So blame Congress. So they don't have to delegate those. They could amend a law. They could amend a statute. They could pass a new law. They could do things. They could change this anytime they want. If Congress doesn't do it, because they're going to pass it. Yeah.
I'm definitely on team trim back the administrative state. So if you're saying what we should do is undelegate.
No, hold on. I'm not talking about trimming back administrative anything. Blah blah blah. That's empty words. I don't care about trimming or adding to the administrative state. I'm saying that if you don't like.
How's that empty word?
Because some administrative state is good, some administrative is bad. I'm not just going to blanket say I don't like it. But we're not talking about the administrative state being too big or small. What you're expressing frustration with, which by the way, I share in this because Gorsuch's writing was so good on Loper. I fully agree with the decision just because of how good of a writer he is. Okay, but our issue here right now isn't the size of the administrative state, it's how much freedom the executive has to interpret things from Congress. If Congress wants to write something lazily, if Congress wants to write a law saying, I think that the executive branch should be able to kick in the balls everybody who's mean, and then the executive branch gets that law, like, well, fuck, who's mean? We're going to interpret it. Your problem there isn't with the executive branch, it's with Congress. They should have delineated very clearly, these are mean people and these aren't mean people. And if they don't, and the executive branch has more statutory authority, I guess, or construction ability to figure it out, then, that's on Congress, right? They can always pass a new law and change that.
Well, and this is, I think, well in line with what you're saying. One of the things that the Biden administration did was interpret Title IX differently than previous administrations, which changes the way that something like a lawsuit about harassment or any discrimination would function, because Title IX is now different because the Biden administration interpreted that way. I think on the flip side, someone under this administration, and I think there's, by the way, a risk that this administration is going to go way too far and roll back DEI in a way that's like a pendulum swing that's dangerous and terrible.
Sure. But just real quick, when you talk about interpreting Title IX differently, and I could be totally wrong, but I feel very strongly that I remember this, wasn't adding gender orientation or whatever the fuck trans shit is, wasn't adding that to Title IX, didn't that survive a Supreme Court challenge somewhere that like Kavanaugh authored an opinion on or something? Or am I making this up?
I'm not sure.
Because I thought somebody challenged the gendered bullshit going to Title IX being part of that. I thought either Gorsuch or Kavanaugh wrote something on an opinion somewhere that made that survive. We were like, okay, yeah, this is part of Title IX. That's fine.
I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if you're right. And the reason I wouldn't be surprised is that interpreting Title IX, what we're talking about right now is not so much a question of like legality or constitutionality, but about administrative preference. Like the executive branch has a pretty wide latitude, especially before Loper, to interpret rules and regulations and laws in the administrative context. So
okay,
just because you have a policy, just like fish thought, you can have a policy, like if this is the band of discretion, you could probably be anywhere within that band, even if it seems very different, and still be legal.
Sure.
Yeah.
But so I'm just checking. So it seems like this was a Title VII question relating to gender discrimination, and then this encompassed transgender people. That was a 6-3 ruling in 2020 that Gorsuch wrote the majority opinion on. Is this even like a bad thing? Like, is this that extreme? Like, if you can't discriminate against somebody for being gay, probably makes sense you can't discriminate against somebody for being trans, like not in a anti-trans discriminatory way. Like, is that really that much of a stretch? Is this like a...
I mean, obviously I don't know this case well because I just said that I was taking your word for it, so I'm not
Sure.
going to comment on that meaningfully. The reason it was relevant is we were talking about whether or not the federal government's view of something like DEI or how to interpret something like DEI would be relevant to a civil litigant, and the answer is yes, because federal government's interpretation of things like Title IX, like various rules and laws in place, would be cited by civil litigants when they were trying to make an argument that there was something discriminatory that happened. So it does matter. It clearly matters. Now, that's not saying that I'm not.
I haven't read too many complaints and everything, but citing the federal government, I feel like you'd be more likely to cite cases. Probably a reasonable thing. I would argue almost.
Oh yeah, his definition of good faith. Yeah, okay. Yep, a subjective argument. Okay, good one. Good one.
Certainly, but I think maybe reasonable minds could disagree. Sure, this is worlds apart from 10 plus actions the Trump admin has taken in like the first month and a half. And this is, and I was asking for like, what are your worst examples?
Yeah, okay, so that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, basically his entire argument is that, but Trump is worse though, right? Trump is worse though, and that's okay, cool, good one.
Examples of things that have happened, and I feel like this is like a thing. It's like, I mean, I could see it going either way, and I think reasonable minds could disagree. And I think the argument is good faith is strong on the side of adding trans discrimination as being a not okay thing under these titles. Like, do you think there's like a difference there, or do you think that it's really like just as bad on one side as it is the other, or?
Can we, if we're circling all the way
sure,
back,
go ahead.
can I reset? Because I think I'm trying to figure out where you're going, and I might have lost you a little bit there. At the beginning, you asked me, like, what were the things that made it hard for me to vote for Harris?
Sure, your top three big issues, yeah.
I listed a bunch of things. And I think that I said things about, like, DEI overreach. I said things about originalism. I said things about breaking the filibuster. I should have said something about the border. I probably said something about Israel. And no, I wouldn't have said something about Ukraine, so I thought she was probably better on Ukraine. So I think the issue was that I just don't think she was. I don't believe, despite her attempt to pivot center, that she was actually going to do things about these issues. Like, I don't think that was. I had no reason to believe that she would, and I think that if she had been elected, then she would have done essentially whatever the Democratic machine wanted her to do. That was kind of the campaign.
Probably like the same stuff that Biden was doing, right?
Yep. Yep. She did it. She was She was really bad at distinguishing herself from Biden. Very bad. And that's why people didn't vote for her, because it was just going to be more of the same.
Saying stuff from like maybe the last 2 years when I think it seemed like he was more and more president by bureaucracy in the last couple of years than in the first couple of years when he seemed sharper. But I don't have any inside information. That's just my own observations from afar.
So well, then that's an even stronger argument that the Democrat machine was controlling Biden, so the same Democrat machine would have been controlling Kamala, right?
Basically.
I mean, I think that was how they ran. I think they ran as, like, if you think about how the primaries went, if you think about how Bernie got crowded out in 2016, I think they ran as, we are the party that has a strong, centralized vision. And
I don't know. I'm just saying that if Kamala would have been president for 4 years, it would probably be reasonable that it would be probably a continuation of what we saw for the last 4 years.
Yep.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. And then I feel like no reasonable mind can disagree on the last 4 years would have been better than, at the very least, what we've seen in the last month and a half. But
well, in which ways? I think that you've seen some things that
wait, if you're gonna list a bunch of things, one at a time, just one thing at a time. And we can go through each, whatever you want to list right now. Yeah.
The border is much better.
So Donald Trump hasn't passed any legislation related to the border whatsoever.
Who gives a shit if he passed legislation? Him being in office is basically like there's no border. Like the crossing of the border is like basically gone. So let me just throw this into, because he's saying, oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, it doesn't matter. He didn't pass any legislation, so therefore it doesn't matter. I'm like, bro, who gives a shit if he passed legislation or not? It did happen underneath him. Like, it's so garbage. It's so, you give an example and it's like, oh, that example doesn't matter. And then he's like, oh, they never give examples. Oh, they never give examples. And like, bro, get out of here. But
research suggests that border crossings did drop drastically when President Trump came into office in January 2025, with apprehensions decreasing significantly from December 2024 to January and further in February 2025. The evidence leans toward Trump's policies contributing to this decline, but it seems likely that the pre-existing downward trend under Biden and other factors, such as seasonal variations and Mexico's enforcement, also played a role. Therefore, while the statement is true, it could be misleading if it implies the drop was solely due to Trump's actions, ignoring the complexity of the situation as of April 1, 2025.
There you go. Boom. Like we already did the whole research into this, and these are all the citations if anyone wants to like look into this. Anyways. So like what he's saying is it's just stupid. It's just goalposty. He doesn't care. Like it's just dumb.
Never had to pass legislation. It was
The last 4 years would have been better than, at the very least, what we've seen in the last month and a half. But
well, in which ways? I think that you've seen some things that.
wait, if you're gonna list a bunch of things, one at a time, just one thing at a time, and we can go through each whatever you want to list right now. Yeah.
The border is much better.
So Donald Trump hasn't passed any legislation related to the border whatsoever.
Never had to pass legislation. It was
So what has he done to make the border much better?
he is enforcing the existing laws more strictly and making it clear that he's disincentivizing illegal crossings.
So before the law wasn't being enforced?
Essentially, yeah, I guess essentially.
The law didn't change between the first Trump administration, the Biden administration, and the current Trump administration. The law has been essentially the same.
Kind of.
What,
I mean, Title 42 is a big deal, but
what I'm saying is you could go from, the kids in cages era to the Biden era to back again without having major change in the law in that sense, because
the Title 42 is a big deal, right?
Well, big deal, but I'll grant you that.
Okay.
But a lot of border policy is executive policy. You can do a lot without changing the law. And this has been clearly demonstrated by the fact that the numbers have totally changed. So, and this was the problem, and this is why I thought the attack where, it was clever, but the idea that Trump was somehow obligated to back the bill that the Democrats were trying to pass through, and I think a lot of Republicans joined in to fix the border. It was a good political tactic, but the problem with it is, and the reason it ultimately didn't, I think, ring true for people, is that people knew that you didn't need it to change a lot of this policy. You knew that it was just a question of executive will.
So you think right now, just to be clear, you think that our border issues can be fixed through executive fiat?
I think they have.
And then I'm also reminding you that earlier in the conversation, one of your biggest fears was expansion of executive power. But you think it'd be good if the president himself would just try to fix the border through executive action?
I think you're oversimplifying there. I think
Okay.
there is a fear of expanding executive authority, but things like border are clearly within the executive's authority.
I super disagree. That is absolutely not true. Immigration Acts, Hart-Celler, these are huge acts that passed Congress, not the president. The president.
Wait, so if the president isn't like if the one thing that the president has control over isn't the border, then what is it? Like if there was one thing that the president has control over, it would be the border. Like what else would it be? Like he has control of the military, but not the border? Wait, what? Like this is
President has the ability to do emergency border stuff.
I'm not saying it's core and exclusive only to him, but I'm saying if you think about the things that the executive branch was originally designed.
Yeah, it would be very important. I like the goalposty or the changing of the Destiny tries to change his words to make him sound like his argument is like much worse than it actually is. It's kind of gross. It's really gross.
To do what were its core functions in the constitutional era with the founding fathers. Military, borders, international trade would be the top three. That's that's what it was for, was to unify the country and to talk about things where you needed to face internationally with one voice. That was its core function. So yeah, I agree that Congress has a role to play there too. But this is not an area where you're going to trim back executive power, even if you're shrinking the sphere of the executive branch, you want to shrink it in other areas. This isn't one of the areas where you shrink it.
Okay, so then I'm just curious. If we go these entire 4 years without any border or immigration bill from Congress, would you consider that a successful Trump presidency on the border?
Depends how it went with the border.
Okay.
Okay.
That's just such an obviously what?
Have you ever done asylum work?
Done what?
Like asylum work? Have you been involved in any of that ever?
Yeah. When I graduated Yale, the first big law firm I worked at made us do pro bono work down at the border. So I had a ton of. No, I haven't done any asylum work. No, obviously no.
Yeah. I saw the wonderful background.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first Trump administration, one of the things that he did is that he changed the order that asylum applications were processed by judges. So it used to be first in, first out. He changed it to
the most
last
recent
in,
ones.
first
Yeah.
out. What that does is it disincentivizes crossings.
Sure, but it also makes it so people who applied first are now waiting infinitely longer for their actual cases to be processed.
Yeah, though I can tell you, because I do a lot of asylum work, that I had a client at the time who was waiting to be processed, and he was delighted because that meant he got to stay in the country for years without having any risk of losing his status. So if you're at the bottom of the pile, it's not bad for you; it's good for you.
I mean, except you're in a limbo and you're not totally sure what your future is going to look like, but.
Well, if you look at stats, I don't know everywhere in the country, but you look at for example, Florida, I think it's 3/4 to maybe even 5/6 of asylum cases are losing once they go to court.
Nowadays, I think those numbers have changed significantly over the past 5 years as people have abused the fuck out of the asylum system. Yeah.
I would totally agree. And the asylum system is one of those areas where that really does need reform.
Yes.
But
which is one of those things that Bill would have done, but.
Yeah, it definitely needs it. But you all like that switch that Trump did in the first administration is an example of something the executive can do to partially ameliorate the problem, while at the same time, even if Congress hasn't gotten around to fixing it yet, and they likely probably won't, given the state of things right now. Though who knows? Maybe, and I'm fingers crossed. I'm hoping that the Democratic Party doesn't go like full Obama McConnell era resistance party, and instead picks like their spots a little bit more carefully. So maybe if they're doing that, maybe they could get a border bill passed.
Why? Why shouldn't they go? They should go full McConnell resistance. No, the Republicans rewarded so handsomely for it.
I think the Republicans were rewarded for it, and this is just going to be a difference of opinion because I don't think there's a way to prove this or disprove it. I think that the Democratic Party's base is not the Republican Party's base.
Yeah, they
and
actually care about rule of law and governance and some semblance of morality.
I don't think that kind of protectionism is going to be rewarded. Like you saw, like at the State of the Union, I don't think that there was like a unified Democratic response where people were like, "Yeah, those signs were so awesome. Shake that cane. This is really working." I think that
true.
That is true, but the playing field is not level. Like the conservative media environment has fully embraced lying and defamation. They fully embraced misinformation. They fully embraced illegality and well, I'll say questionable legality because of course we're still figuring that out. So yeah, it's a very difficult playing field.
The playing field is not level. The advantage the Democrats have in terms of like demographic playing field is that there are more Democrats. And that's the big advantage. And that the people in the center, I think, could break left. The advantage that Republicans have is that their base is more cohesive. That's their big advantage. So when you get into a fractured information environment where everyone's hyper-partisan and everything's like screaming and shouting and fucking yelling at people and, your bad faith and this is going to be this crazy example, or for example, your stuff about talking about, how happy you are that somebody got shot at Trump's assassination attempt in that rally.
True. Wow. Damn, Dusty, you didn't let him call you out like that?
I think that information environment favors Republicans. I think that in a world where the way you win is that you meme and you edgelord and you get engagement, that is going to be a place where the more cohesive base unifies and has disproportionate power. And I think the Democrats need to find other ways of messaging. I don't think they can compete on that playing field. It doesn't work for them. But I mean, this is just my own interpretation. Like I said, it's not like I've just studied that I can cite on this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you disagree? You think that going that route is going to favor Democrats?
The 55% outcome, I think, right now is that despite how online everything is and how much even I get Twitter poison-brained or whatever, in terms of actual true MAGA sycophants who would march and die with Trump, my guess is that's probably only like 20 to 30% of the Republican base, maybe more. But you only need to change like 4 to 5% of voters' minds to make a party basically completely unviable. My guess is going to be, with all the abhorrent economic policy, that the midterms are hopefully going to go well for the Democrats because there's no way that so many people are going to be able to stomach whatever economic fallout comes from the insane tariff and everything else going on. That'd be my guess. So my guess is going to be whatever Democrats do isn't going to matter that much because the economy is going to flip so hard. But I guess we'll see.
I mean, the economy, yeah, that would be one way to do it. I think the other way to do it, if I was a Democratic strategist, would be look at the fracture point on the right now, because there is one. There's essentially, I don't know what the right term is. It's like the woke right versus the non-woke right, we could call it, where, like just the other day, there was like a huge thing on X about like everyone on the let's call it the woke right talking about how terrible Justice Barrett is because she voted against Trump. I mean, she voted for him on immunity. She voted to get rid of the right to abortion. Like this has been, if you're a conservative, this has been a hugely successful justice. And if you're a lawyer,
where is this fracture point on the right? I feel like every single person on the right was hating on Barrett. Who were the people defending her?
I mean, anyone who's.
I mean, she ruled in favor of the immunity ruling for Trump. Don't you think Trump people are going to be celebrating that for her? Like, are you? Like, what do you... Like, he literally just said it, and you're just completely ignoring that fact, and there's like, well, I didn't see any of that. So what if she actually did agree with the whole immunity ruling? That doesn't mean that people were supporting her for it. So you're saying that Trump people aren't supporting the fact that she ruled yes on the immunity ruling for basically Trump? Like, this is like a... I don't know how he has this, like, contradictory statements within his head at the exact same time. It's just stupid.
No, not anyone who's, I mean, like, specifically, I don't think there was a single media person, single politician, was there a single anybody that was defending Barrett here?
Oh, we want a single media person. Like,
in terms
okay,
of like
whatever.
media personalities, I'm not sure that I'm like fluent enough to know. I mean, I think in like my circles where it was like, what do like conservative lawyers think? What do like conservative professors type think? Yeah, everyone was defending her because she was A, probably right, and B, she's been a phenomenal justice, and C, you don't get to grade justices on whether they do what you want. That's just an inappropriate way to view a Supreme Court justice in general. And that's the argument that was made for decades against, when people were complaining about originalism. It's like, you don't get to just judge them because you don't like what they do. You actually have to get into the nitty gritty on the law to have an opinion. So yeah, I mean, I saw pushback there, and I think that is a legitimate fracture point between people who are never die Trumpers and people who, I wouldn't even say like me. I say people like Lactoid would be a good example, who voted for Trump but had some like severe reservations about doing so.
I would be shocked if, given the lack of spine that degenerate fuck has, I would be shocked if he actually came out and defended Amy. If he did, my respect for him will increase 3 points. On Twitter, if I were to go and check, guys, did Lactoid actually...
Bro, remember, this guy doesn't even... Bro, this guy was surprised when Tim Pool made that argument on Peace Goes thing that we watched yesterday. So, like, this guy doesn't pay attention to anyone that's not on his side. Like, he doesn't know anything. So, like, he goes, I'll be shocked if this guy actually did it. Yeah, you were shocked about something that Tim Pool said for years, and you're, like, shocked when he said it on that debate. And he's like, oh, he just stumbled across this thing. Like, bro, you don't pay attention to these things. You don't.
Defend Amy's decision?
I don't know.
So this is just a meaningless statement. Yeah, that's the word.
I certainly did, but I'm not sure what position he took. Hopefully he did.
Okay. I'm just curious on that, but...
Oh, just be curious.
I mean, I think that I think coming out of this presidency, if there's a party that can articulate clear, authentic, and believable principles. But that part of what people liked about Trump, by the way, is that even though he lies all the time, he's more or less doing what he said he was going to do. Now, it turns out a lot of that stuff maybe isn't stuff that you want him to do. But he says he's going to go out and do something, he generally speaking tends to do it. And I think the left needs to find somebody who can project that level of authenticity, which is crazy. Like I said, he lies all the time. But with Harris, I don't think people believed her. I don't think people believed when she taxed center. I don't think people believed when she tried to say anything. I think that they viewed her as a creature of the establishment. And what they need is somebody who can actually articulate a vision and make it believable, which is, by the way, how Biden won. It was his blueprint. It was Obama's blueprint. It was Clinton's blueprint. That's how Democrats win.
Okay. I mean, I think it all just now comes down to my argument now is I think we just live in an influencer economy when it comes to politics, and I think it's whoever can capture the most attention is the person that's going to win. And right now, Trump, not through any political ingeniousness of his own, but just due to the fact that he's an attention whore, has just mastered this particular environment because he loves attention. It's like how he exists.
I mean, you can make the argument he's the best that ever lived at that. Like, I mean, literally, I mean, that is his best skill, is self-promotion, attention, media cycles. He's incredibly good at it. And I don't, if the Democratic strategy is to beat him at that game, I don't really see that happening. But then, we'll have Vance in 2028 and you've got to get another shot.
Yeah. True.
So, at the end of this, it feels like I have not convinced you that this is not going to work out and that you should use your platform to try to find ways to pick the spots and articulate the policy that's going to resonate and guide the Democratic Party going forward. We're leaning into memes.
Oh, no, I think I agree with that. I don't think I ever disagreed with that. I'm just... it's just frustrating the supposedly centrist or supposedly center-right people who will infantilize and place so much defense for clearly abhorrent Trump things, and then just be so harsh on hypothetical things that haven't happened or that didn't happen or that were overturned and then didn't go. It's just like that world is just very frustrating to me, I guess.
I get the frustration. I mean, I totally get that. I think the thing that's frustrating as somebody who like lives in that kind of like centrist, I couldn't vote for either of these candidates world, is that the fixation that every question gets turned into, oh, wasn't Trump worse? Every single time. Never is it,
yes,
we actually have a better answer.
It's a one-on-one election.
Yes. So isn't Trump worse? Isn't Trump, like, bro, isn't Trump worse basically made the Democrats lose and like Kamala lost and that was you ran on, oh, Trump's worse and no one gave a shit. Like, bro, this is wild. He's like the centrist that didn't vote at all is literally telling you what he thinks, and you're like, nah, that's not true. That can't be true. Even though we did lose the election, like, but that still can't be true. Like, bro, what are you, like, he's in, Destiny's living in denial, literally living in denial right now. Like the centrist guy that didn't do it is telling you how he feels about the situation. You're like, nah, that's not true, bro. This is retarded.
Play so much defense for like clearly abhorrent Trump things, and then just be so harsh on hypothetical things that haven't happened or that didn't happen or that were overturned and then didn't go. It's just like that world is just very frustrating to me, I guess.
I get the frustration. I mean, I totally get that. I think the thing that's frustrating as somebody who like lives in that kind of like centrist, I couldn't vote for either of these candidates world, is that the fixation that every question gets turned into, oh, wasn't Trump worse? Every single time. Never is it, but we actually have a better answer.
It's a one-on-one
Like,
election. What do you mean? Of course it's going to be who's better or who's worse.
I think that Biden won in part on the strength of not Trump.
Sure.
But I think that people tired of that. Like I think that in a very real sense, the Democratic Party has become the party of not Trump, which gives him indirect control over their party, their policies and messaging. And it's illusion.
True.
Like, you know, the best, most plausible explanation for why border crossings increased under Biden is because he wanted to do the opposite of what Trump did. So he just reversed all the executive orders.